Hello, and welcome to the arbitration conversation. So we're getting closer to number 100. And as we get closer to 100 arbitration conversations, we're sort of saving the best for last. Some really big heavy hitters in dispute resolution, voices we're excited to hear from, and one of those is Alan Waxman. Alan Waxman is the president and CEO of the International Institute for Conflict Prevention and Resolution, otherwise known as CPR. CPR has been tremendously important as a think tank, as a leader in dispute prevention and resolution, and I'm really excited to have Alan with us. So Alan, thank you for taking time.
Thank you for having me.
So first, I do want to ask you, I actually ask this quite a bit because I think it's really interesting, especially for students, to kind of hear how someone ends up in this kind of a position, really a dream position for many who are interested in dispute resolution. Could you explain your journey of how did you come to the CPR, becoming the president and CEO?
Sure. No, that's a great question. Thanks, Amy, and thanks for allowing me to speak to your constituents here. So I was first introduced to CPR when I was the head of litigation at Pfizer. I had taken on that position after being a trial lawyer in private practice with the law firm of Williams and Connolly, where I was really enjoying trial practice, litigation, disputes, the strategies and so forth of working through them, working with teams, trying to find ways to get things done. And I went over to Pfizer to head up litigation. And if you're someone who likes litigation, that's a heck of a position. There's an awful lot of it. And I began to realize when I went in-house that management of disputes felt very differently when you own them and weren't just being hired to manage them as an outside counsel. And I realized that this is not the most efficient way to resolve disputes by going to court. There is a place for court. I'm not against court. I think there's a place and time for it, and there's some great judges and processes. But at the same time, especially when it comes to a number of commercial matters and other matters like that, it is not terribly efficient. And that's when I first got introduced to CPR, whose mission was really to find better ways to resolve disputes. And that very much resonated with me. And so Pfizer was a member. I got involved in some of the CPR activities. My career progressed forward. I continued to practice law. I was with some other companies as well. And then recently, although recently now is a couple of years ago, and because of the pandemic, that feels like about 7 years ago. But in 2019, when my predecessor, Noah Haft, was stepping down, I found out about the position and recalled how its mission very much resonated with me, and thought that, this would be a fun thing to be engaged with. I had at parts of my career done my part in perhaps exacerbating disputes and really wanting to invest myself in how to find those better, more efficient ways, not only to resolve disputes, but to prevent them as well. And we think of our mission at CPR as managing conflict to enable purpose.
Well, and the truth is, when we talk about what does CPR do, I think that kind of is a great segue to kind of what you do and how you are able to help think about conflict management, not just resolution, but prevention. So I really, what exactly do you guys do? I mean, it's different. I would say you can explain it better than anyone from like the AAA or JAMS.
Yes. So there's an aspect to us that is like AAA and JAMS. We do have a dispute resolution services provider side to the organization where we have 600 plus neutrals, and we administer mediations and arbitrations, dispute resolution boards, and all kinds of other services in support of dispute resolution. What is different is that affiliated with the provider side is the think tank you were referring to before. And what makes us really unique and very special is how many places is there a table where you can convene folks who represent companies, folks who represent plaintiffs, folks who work as neutrals, academics, practitioners, others, to come together all in service of, hey, how might we better manage disputes? And you mentioned before, this is the whole spectrum. We go from dispute prevention. So how can, conflict is inevitable. So the distinction we draw is we say conflicts are always going to arise in any kind of a relationship. Indeed, sometimes conflict is productive. It helps progress change and growth and so forth.
100%. Yeah.
It's when that conflict crosses the line into a value depleting dispute that is distracting from resources and energy and finances and purpose, that it becomes problematic. And so that's when we have discussions around, so what can we do early on to mitigate that conflict from becoming a dispute, and then all the way through a committee structure that we have in place that focuses on different areas to help resolve disputes. That may be mediations, arbitrations, employment disputes, and dispute prevention. We focus on this in various industries. So we look at what our best practices involving various industries. And the think tank generates work product. Those may be procedures, rules to help guide dispute management, protocols. We host events, networking opportunities, and so forth. So that is really unique. It takes the provider side, but it also is affiliated with the think tank that brings people together in service of dispute management.
That's so important. I mean, I think my students, I hope they listen, because problem solving is something we do and talk about a lot in class, because as lawyers, that's really what we are called to do, right? I mean, really, if at the heart of our job and our mission is to solve problems, and conflict management is a big part of that. And you mentioned, you were saying in different areas and contexts, that you sort of bring convenings, perhaps bringing folks, experts together and coming up with ideas. I guess I'd love to hear more about the work you're currently doing with respect to employment and mass claims and employment contexts. If you wouldn't mind sharing a little bit about mass claims in that area in the protocol.
Sure. And let me just go back on problem solving. I was an in-house counsel for many years as general counsel of Pfizer and other companies. And I agree with you and what you're teaching your students. Identifying the problem, which lawyers are very good at doing. Lawyers have a keen sense of identifying the risk, is really only about 25% of the job. The other 3/4 of the job is how to solve the problem you've identified. Too many lawyers, and I know this from being a client, sort of stop at that problem identification stage. What we need is to find solutions. And indeed, when I came into CPR 2 years ago, one of the problems in the dispute resolution area was in employment and was in mass claims. There was a terrible problem where lots of mass claims were being filed together with provider institutions that couldn't really handle all of those claims. And so the claims were sitting there. There were threshold arguments over fees and filings and so forth. And that was doing no service to any of the claimants or the companies who were stuck, large fees being amassed, et cetera. And so we really entered the field. We have a background in the employment disputes area through our think tank, through our committee, through work that we've done with the Scheinman Institute and others. And we said, let's put our heads together and see how we can solve this problem. And just recently, we took some of the work we did a couple of years ago, we just updated it with a task force of leading lawyers from the plaintiff's bar, leading lawyers from the defense bar, in-house counsel, neutrals. And we came up with a protocol that takes a page from other mass claims adjudication areas, where in essence, you take the initial cases that are filed, you pick randomly test cases from those initial cases, you stay everything else, so you're not wasting resources. You proceed with the test cases in kind of a fast track fashion to get results through arbitrations. And in the selection of those arbitrations, and I I can talk about this as well as an imperative for us. We focus on making sure the pool from which we're selecting is a diverse pool, which is a real critical issue in employment and other arenas to lend credibility to the process. Those test cases then, after the selection of the arbitrators, go forward, render awards. The awards get anonymized to remove who the claimants are, and they're then provided to a mediator who has 90 days to meet with the remaining parties and try to come up with a global framework for resolving all the cases. And there's incentives there for both sides to come to the table within those 90 days to develop the framework, because if they don't develop the framework, then anybody, either the company or the claimants, can opt out and go to court and say, I'm out of the arbitration process, I'm going to court. With all the uncertainties that court renders, this is an incentive to really come together on a global framework which can serve everybody in resolving the tens or hundreds or thousands of other cases.
Has this protocol it's now been adopted, and has it been used?
So it's been adopted. It's in early stages of use. We're getting some good experience with it there, but it does seem to be driving parties to think about resolution. So we're really looking forward to continuing uptake of the protocol and continuing use.
Wow, yeah, I mean, that's fascinating. It's fascinating also because it seems to borrow from some of the sort of European ideas around mass claims. Was that used at all in your analysis?
I don't think it was so much European, but I was thinking of in the mass torts area where I had done a lot of work in the past. This is also the identification of bellwether cases, having results that can inform a mediation process, the mediation process trying to put a framework together, has worked very well in those situations. And I think it's going to work well in this situation as well.
Yeah, it's very interesting. And certainly we live in a time now where there's a lot of these kind of mass arbitration filings, not only in employment, but also consumer cases. So have they talked about any similar type protocol for consumer cases?
Yeah, in fact, we are getting requests to try to take this work into the consumer area, and we're considering that as well. Consumer has generally not been an area CPR has been involved in, but it's something we're thinking about, and maybe something else so we can pull together some smart thought leaders to help us develop some innovative ideas.
Yeah, I mean, I think it just makes a lot of sense, especially when you think about mass consumer claims right now. And certainly there'd be a lot of need. I mean, this is really interesting. And you know what it is, which I love, is innovative thinking, thinking outside the box, and trying to come up with a plan to solve problems. And then hopefully along the way, as you learn, are you open, and is the group open to perhaps modifying the protocol if needed?
Yes, in fact, as I mentioned, the initial version of the protocol was launched a couple of years back. And as we learned things, we convened a task force to come together and made additional modifications. And we can continue doing that. I mean, this is not a one and done type thing. This is something I think through experience, we'll learn more and more, and we're open to making modifications.
Yep, that's what problem solving is all about.
Absolutely.
So Alan, thank you. I promised I wouldn't take too much time. I really do appreciate it. This has been fascinating, really interesting, and I'm excited to watch and see what happens with the protocol and how it moves ahead and keeps on evolving in order to help solve problems. So thank you. Have a wonderful rest of your day.
Well, thank you. You too.